Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. Occasionally you get a fight that sort of slides under everyone's radar, which is actually a really interesting, intriguing, and potentially exciting matchup. And I think we've got that on Saturday. And this is the fight I'm talking about is between the undefeated Philip Schofield of America, 22 years old, big prospect, 18 wins with 12 KOs, no draws, no defeats, and Tevin Farmer, sort of polar opposite, really. Tough veteran, very, very tough veteran. 33 wins with only 8 KOs, 8 defeats, and 1 draw. Now, the veteran, 34-year-old Farmer, 12 years the senior of Schofield, is coming off 3 defeats on the bounce. And in my opinion, I think he won at least 2 of those fights. I thought he won. But 2 of them were quite close. He lost to Raymond Muratalla. That was in 2024, only a year ago. Okay, he lost a unanimous decision over 10 rounds. And the cards were very, very close. I think a couple of them only had a point in it. I thought Muratalla edged it, but a lot of people thought that Tevin Farmer deserved the nod, or at least deserved a draw. Yeah, it was close, but I can only go by what I saw at the time, and I thought Muratalla did edge it slightly. I wouldn't have complained with a draw, even a point to Farmer, to be honest with you. But the point was that Muratalla at the time was 20-0 in fights, and in fact, he is now, I believe, he's the IBF lightweight champ, having won the interim belt because Loma was sidelined, and then when Loma retired, which he did a couple of weeks ago, Muratalla was upgraded to what I call the full fat champion. So there's no shame in Farmer, a veteran, tough veteran, former super featherweight champion. IBF super featherweight champion. There's no shame in him losing, a close decision to Muratalla. And in fact, that got him a fight last November with another undefeated fighter, William Zepeda. So there's a bit of a pattern developing here. Former super featherweight champ taking on leading lightweights who probably fancy having his name on their record. But the Zepeda fight, the first of 2, in November of last year, was a very, very close fight, which I thought Farmer edged. He actually scored a knockdown in the 4th round, and if memory serves, he hurt, or he stung Zepeda in the 1st round. Was it another one of the early rounds? But he was so sharp, boxed so beautifully, aggressively. It was a sort of mixture of back foot boxing, or what I call back foot aggression, thrown in with little pockets of front foot aggression. He constantly, he's a southpaw Farmer, so he was switching from long range, coming forward, sort of popping the jab mid range, and then when he got in close, he was trying to have the last word in the exchanges. And I think for the most part, although Zepeda clearly had the heavier hands and did win rounds, I definitely thought Farmer won that fight. In fact, he lost a split decision. Inevitably, they had another fight, a rematch, which I think was warranted, considering the closeness of the first fight. And Zepeda won that one, this time on a majority decision. And perhaps I shouldn't point out that both those Zepeda fights were for the WBC's interim lightweight champ. So we've got ourselves a guy in Tevin Farmer who is kind of being almost shoehorned into this gatekeeper role for these leading lightweights. Now, in the rematch, there's no doubt. I definitely thought Zepeda won the rematch. And Farmer was hurt quite badly. Early on, 3rd or 4th round, he was reeling. But I tell you what, I can't recall seeing too many fights over the last 10 years where the guy who's under the cosh shows such incredible toughness. Farmer, a guy who suffered if memory serves, I think he lost his debut by TKO to a fighter. I can't remember the name of the guy. And then he lost to Jose Pedraza as far back as 2012. He was stopped in the final round of an 8-rounder. I don't know whether those guys had concrete fists or whether Farmer has had steel surgically put into his jaw. But the amount of punishment he took in the rematch against Zepeda was shocking. And he came back. I mean, he was winning rounds as well. Now, like I say, this was a majority decision. One guy did 114, which is 6 rounds each. I thought that was a bit fanciful. I thought Zepeda won that fight. He won the fight. But then the other two judges, I think there was a 115, 113, 116, 112, something along those lines. But the point is that Farmer has lost 3 on the bounce to, 2 undefeated guys who are, very, very highly thought of, very, very highly ranked. One of them is now the IBF champ. And he's given both these guys, a lot of work and really made them earn their wins, And like I say, I did think he won the first Zepeda fight. So, in other words, Farmer at 34, he had quite a bit of time out. He didn't fight in 2021 and 2022. And then he came back. He had 3 wins against moderate opposition. Back at lightweight. He came back at lightweight, having lost to Joseph Diaz. He lost his IBF belt to Jojo Diaz. Came back, had 3 wins, and then he had those 3 defeats on the bounce, But he is still, without question, a very, very capable, world-class fighter. The extra poundage may have done him some good, jumping up to lightweight. Maybe it did improve his resiliency, his toughness. I don't know. That's possible. That does happen sometimes. But the knock against Farmer is he just doesn't have much power because he is a very, very crafty, high IQ boxer, box fighter, I would say. But the lack of power is probably his undoing a little bit because against both Muratalla and Schofield, even though he did have Schofield Zepeda. He did have Zepeda on the floor, like I say, in the 4th round of the first fight, and did hurt him, genuinely hurt him. But he hasn't quite got that knockout power, that extra little bit of meat on the punch that can put the opponent on the floor and preferably keep them there. So that brings us to FLOYD Schofield, who, like I say, is a prospect, a young prospect, 22 years old, 12 KOs in 18 wins, no draws, no defeats. And this kid was supposed to be going in with Shakur Stevenson. This would have been on the undercard of Joseph Parker versus Daniel Dubois, which was, as we know that was cancelled because of Dubois' illness and so on. And sure enough, if we're talking illnesses, Schofield pulled out sick of that fight on the undercard. I mean, it's quite possible there might have been something going around that Dubois got, Schofield got, and other fighters were lucky to avoid. But I think that might have been a blessing in disguise because I think putting Schofield in with Shakur, he would have been exposed. Schofield is a talented kid, good skills, reasonable power. But if you look at his last fight, which was against René Telegiron, he got put down late in that fight, having won most of the rounds with, again, some smart boxer punching. He was put down in the 11th round, and I mean, Giron will probably feel he was a little unlucky not to have more time to get his work done. But on 2 of the cards, were very, very wide, and I think probably rightly so. I mean, I thought this was a sort of 117, 111 win. Well, it would be a 116, 111 win, 10-8 in the 11th for Giron. But I definitely thought Schofield won it. But it was nevertheless a little bit of an alarm bell to see the guy go on the floor. It made you think, hello, has he been somewhat exposed? Or is this, a lesson learned the hard way? Maybe, it's quite possible you end up as a better fighter if you go through that baptism by fire and you look at what you did wrong. Okay, I got tagged, but he's done the 12 rounds. He did the 12 rounds. It was a unanimous decision win. Prior to that, he'd only gone 10 rounds. I want to say, I think once. And, this is how you learn. And he's only 22, all right? He's an orthodox fighter. He likes to switch it a bit. And at times I get the impression he's trying to be a bit too flashy with the skills. I mean, if you look at other fighters who are sort of stylistically in that bracket, Abdullah Mason is another prospect. These young American fighters who, they're not Mayweather clones, but you can see there's a little bit of Mayweather influence in what they do. I think Schofield he's a very good fighter, but I feel the need to say that the jury is still out at top level. The raw materials are there. We've seen a lot of that talent in the ring. Kid's got a good future ahead of him. But I repeat, I think it was a blessing in disguise that he pulled out of that Shakur-Stevenson fight, because I think Stevenson would have beaten him probably by stoppage in about 8 to 10 rounds. I'm not sure Schofield goes as high as someone like Shakur or an Abdullah Mason. I mentioned Abdullah Mason earlier. I mean, I'm thinking of the younger American fighters around this weight division. But, am I being too hard on the kid? I don't know. Time will tell. But can he beat Tevin Farmer? Yes, he definitely can. He's got a natural athleticism, which might be able to deal with Farmer's. Farmer likes to spring in. Like I say, he can counterpunch, or he can be aggressive and come forward. I think Schofield would probably prefer it if Farmer did come forward. But skill-wise, let's say it was for a couple of rounds, it was a battle of the jabs, as an example. I wouldn't write Schofield off. And this is only a 10-rounder. This is not a 12-rounder. So, prediction-wise, it's very difficult, because the 3 defeats on the bounce for Farmer, I mean, that was a total of 34 rounds against really currently elite lightweights, and now he's going in with another undefeated kid. I think, is it the freshness that's going to prevail, or is it all the experience? Because Farmer, to keep his motivation going, having lost 3 fights on the bounce that he was very, very competitive in, and to still keep going forward, still believing that you've got another world title shot in you, that must be difficult. I know Farmer was moaning about it after the second Zepeda fight. What do I have to do to get the result? What do I have to do this? In fact, I thought he did lose that fight. But the first Zepeda fight, I thought he won, and the Muratalla fight was very close. Has he got the motivation? Is the tank running a little bit low on, after those 3 arduous contests? Is Schofield a little bit too fresh? It would not surprise me at all if Farmer sprang an upset. And if this was over 12, I think I would probably be picking Farmer. But you know what? I think I'm going to stick my neck out a little bit. I'm going to say that Farmer, I think it'll go the distance. I think it'll last the full 10. And for once in a while, I'm going to go with my heart rather than my head. And I think Tevin Farmer might spring an upset here against Schofield. A more likely scenario is Schofield wins a very competitive 10-rounder. But you know what? Last week I did a preview for Galadia Fi's fight, and I was tempted to pick dear old Francisco, who went on to batter Galal, and instead I went with Youth. So this week I'm going to put the boot on the other foot. I'm going to go for Tevin Farmer to spring a very close, competitive, but deserved upset win over FLOYD Schofield. And of course I could be wrong. Please don't put any money on it, because I certainly won't be. But yeah, I'd like to see Farmer do it. No disrespect to Schofield. I also think that that Schofield, coming off that tough lesson learned, which was last November, so we're talking 7 months ago, I'm wondering where his confidence will be, because the second Zepeda fight for Farmer was only in March, and in fact the first one was in November last year. So he's had those two Zepeda fights in the same time that Schofield had that, scare against Giron. But I'm going to go for Farmer to spin the upset in 10 on points. So we will see. But please don't put any money on it. All right, who do you think is going to win? Put your thoughts down below, and I'll have a read of them. Put your reasoning down as well. I like to read why you think they'll win. Yeah, and please, if you like the video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you would, because you're helping us out a great deal. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me, and hopefully you'll continue to join me. I'll catch you later. Bye for now.